Let's take a look at this now. Fighting on the Red Sea has meant that the shortest route between Asia and Europe is interrupted. This does, though, present an opportunity, or does it, for the African continent, as shipping containers have had to reroute and come all the way down to the Cape of Good Hope, and that's right here at our doorstep. We take a look at this now as more than 100 container ships were rerouted near southern Africa so they could avoid the Suez Canal due to safety issues. We're joined by Hendrikse, who is a managing director at Servest Marine. That's correct. Thank you very much, Andrew, for your time this afternoon. Perhaps let's start with this. You can help us make sense of what is going on by helping us understand where you fit in the bigger picture.
Judy, thank you so much for having me on the air. It's a pleasure to be here. I think just to give a broader context, I think we need to, first of all, understand the impact globally that this has. If you consider that about 15% of all world trade goes through the Suez Canal, and that's a huge amount of shipping that happens that goes via that conduit. If you consider that's about 20,000 ships a year that go through the Suez Canal, and at the moment those numbers have dropped by about 45% due to the current crisis in the Red Sea. If you consider what that means, just from a logistics perspective and from an operational perspective, if you were a ship owner, you'd have to make the voyage of an extra 5,000 kilometers around the Cape of Good Hope. This takes about a week to 10 days additional time. So that means that everything is delayed. All the schedules that you have established for your shipping lines have now been disrupted and are running behind schedule. There's obviously additional costs because, a ship doing 5,000 kilometers, would need additional fuel. So the fuel costs will increase by, they reckon, the average vessel that's doing a voyage of that nature, carrying containers would need an additional excess of $1 million just in fuel. Then there's all the other logistics and operational aspects to it as well, like your crewing costs, your repairs and maintenance schedules, which would have to be, which would now mean that 12 days or 10 days more at sea would mean those costs would have to be part of that particular voyage. And then, of course, your insurances are going to increase. So all of these costs have a massive impact at a time when we've been seeing shipping container rates and other shipping rates drop quite significantly in the last 18 months, which has been great because it has had an inflationary positive effect. It's helped inflation drop worldwide with shipping rates dropping. And all of a sudden you're going back to where you were going back to where you're seeing shipping rates more than double around the Cape. Some lines put surcharges on over 100%. So it really has a massive impact just on the costs worldwide of shipping. Then you have a look and see exactly how it's impacting here around the African coast. And obviously, for us, we see it maybe as a windfall, but in some respects. If you talk to agents and launch operators like Servest, which do OPL, which is off-port limits services to ships passing the South African coast, we have seen an increase in inquiries and requests for services. We've actually seen physical increase in activity, particularly around bunkering. Now, that's the main concern for most of these ship owners. They're saying, we need more fuel. This is a much longer trip. We need fuel. Now, where are we going to get that fuel on that voyage around the Cape? The obvious place is here in South Africa. But South Africa has 3 ports where we can offer bunkering services. Those ports are under stress already. So you can have Cape Town, you have Durban, you have Richards Bay available to give bunkering, which is fuel to ships passing by that have to come into port to get those fuel delivered to that vessel. The ports are congested. So that's a problem. Then you have other parts of Africa where they can take fuel, other ports in Africa, which are becoming quite favorable and competing against South Africa. You're looking at Mauritius, at Port Louis, very popular. They also have tankers offshore. That means that they can transfer fuel without even having to go into port there. There's also Maputo in Mozambique, Luanda in Angola, and of course Walvis Bay in Namibia also offering bunkering services. So all these ports are looking to actually get that bit of business, which could be seen as a windfall for them over this period. And we don't know how long this could last. This could take months. We don't know. I know that the top 18 shipping lines have said that they are diverting their vessels via the Cape.
All right.
Two of those two. Go ahead.
Sure. Andrew, what are we hearing from you essentially? That this is a missed opportunity for South Africa because according to the World Bank and S&P Global Market Intelligence 2022 Container Port Performance Index, the Durban port and the Cape Town port were ranked poorly, coming in almost towards the end.
Correct. I mean, Durban was, I think, the fourth worst port as far as efficiencies go in last year's indexes. Cape Town wasn't far behind. And that has put pressure on vessels coming into our ports. It's put pressure on making sure that our economy can flow with goods coming, exports and imports. But of course, it means that our ports are congested. So vessels now want you to come in to take bunkers in Durban or in Cape Town. It's going to cost, first of all, a lot of money. It's going to cost about $35,000 just to come into port. Once they import, there's uncertainty of how long it will take for that to be delivered to them. When will the next tugboat be available to take them out of the port? So there's all these concerns and uncertainty, which means that this is an opportunity being missed to a large extent. And especially if you look at what happened in Algoa Bay. I mean, Algoa Bay would have been the perfect place to take bunkers if you looked at the middle of last year. There were three big tankers operating off the port of Port Elizabeth, of Quebec. Those tankers were doing what they call STS transfers of bunkers. So a ship wouldn't have to even come into port. They can come alongside the vessel, the big tanker, take their fuel and move on. But unfortunately, that whole operations in PE, which was absolutely perfect for this type of scenario, came to a halt in the second half of last year due to a dispute with SARS and the bunker operators. And that has not yet been resolved. And there's been lots of income for many companies have had to close down in Quebec. You've had lots of people have been retrenched, and a whole industry that was developing around servicing these vessels. There was about 150 vessels a month that were being serviced, has all come to a halt in Quebec at the moment, which is really a big pity if you consider the opportunity that has now arisen.
How costly will that opportunity be? And maybe in answering that question, let's take a look at this, because oftentimes we never understand the magnitude of a problem until it gets personal. And so these ships that are rerouting, what is in those containers that will ultimately have an impact on you and I? And we cannot even buffer the situation or create a buffer, because here we are losing money when ships are just passing us by.
You have there's an estimate between 7,000 and up to 14,000 vessels that pass the South African coast every month, regardless of the situation that's happening in the Suez Canal. And there's such a massive opportunity. You're talking billions of dollars worth of opportunity that's just passing us by every single month. And this has been going on for years. And, Servest, Marine and other service operators, launch service operators, we do our best to try and attract, along with our agents, attract as much of that business as possible, that doing crew changes, giving provisions, supplies to vessels as they're passing by, and being as competitive as possible in an international market. You're talking here probably tens of billions of dollars, not even rands, worth of revenues that could be earned if we manage to actually exploit our global position and create a real hub with governments coming on board, giving incentives to ship owners to use our ports and our offshore, what we call OPL, off-port limits, where you operate outside the port, but you have activity from the port going out, ships, little boats going out, launch services going out, and meeting these passing vessels and giving them their supplies, giving them fuel, giving them fresh water, and doing crew changes. You're talking about international crew that are flying in, they're staying in our hotels. They are then being taken out to meet ships. Then obviously there's a crew change happening, so the crew that was on board comes off, goes to a hotel overnight, then flies out of our country. All of this activity at the moment has not been correctly exploited, and it's a really wasted opportunity. And if we had our ducks in a row right now, we could really do very well out of this in the coming months. But in the long term, this could be something that we need to be untapping around our coastline.
Which department is responsible for this?
Department of Transport is definitely very much involved in this. They've now formed what they call the the BMA, the Border Management Authority, and all the various government authorities and agencies that are to do with managing our coastlines, managing the borders of South Africa, are all part of this BMA, and I've met with them, and we're making good progress in beginning to liaise with them to try and find ways to work together, and they are committed as well to see us grow. So it is positive, but it needs to happen now, and it should have happened already. Okay. But the BMA is really the government agency with all the various players involved, from immigration, customs, the border police, Department of Transport, SAMSA, etc. They're all part of this agency. They've all formed part of this new agency that was formed during the course of last year.
Okay, sure. We understand that one of the challenges at the Port of Cape Town, at least, is a lack of rubber-tired gantries and engines. What are rubber-tired gantries, and something so important, how are we without it?
Yeah, this is a different topic to what's happening in the Red Sea, because actually what's happening in the Red Sea will not really impact the trade in and out of South Africa. But getting to that question, a gantry is basically, if you can imagine, a vehicle with wheels, and it's like almost, it goes up 10 meters into the air, and in the middle of this vehicle you can actually put a full container, and it picks up, using a crane mechanism, again, a winch mechanism, it picks up containers and moves them around inside the port. Or it moves them from a vessel, from a ship, to the port. And there's a shortage of these both in Cape Town and Durban, and I know that in Cape Town they're busy getting some new ones into the port that they've procured, and I know that they've actually managed to get some of the ones that were broken down, because they were there, but they were broken down. In both in Durban and in Cape Town, they managed to repair a certain number of them in the last 3 months. So things are improving, but yet there's still a big backlog and a lot of work to be done in order to get the efficiencies up. I hope that explains what a gantry is, a rubber wheel gantry.
Sure. Thank you very much. We could actually imagine it. Yeah, thank you for your time, Andrew. Unfortunately, that's all the time we can afford. Andrew Hendrikse is the Managing Director at Servest Marine. Okay.